Hi again. We are at the zest part again. We're going to make the brownies are baking. They smell pretty good. And I was silly to think I could put a 9 by 13 inch pan into a toaster oven. No, I had to subdivide it into two, and it turned out beautifully, right? Especially with the parchment paper. The dough for the brownies was thick. I tasted it. Wasn't too sweet. It's going to be mwah. We did it right. Now I'm back at the zest. Now I had three and a half lemons, and I need to make 3 tablespoons of zest from these lemons. And so I had to go after some lemons. I'd used kind of half of one for some tea and such, and had a little bit of, made them for drinks, but I need the zest. I need all the zest I can get. There's a little bit of zest here. It's mostly flesh. And it made me think that there's a lot of zest in our lives that is spiritually driven, that is providence provided. The freedom of America gives us the freedom to pursue happiness. That is the zest of life. And sometimes other things get in the way. And I'll tell you, it's really hard to cut this zest off of this. It's really hard to get the zest out. But what I can do is cut off the body. Cut off my need. So I've got my special little dollar store knife, which I love. These things are great. We get like 2 or 3 of them for $1. And it's much easier, look at this, to cut off the body to get to the zest. You see how thin that is? Let me show you a piece that has the body on it. You see, there's a little, I tried to get the zest off, but there's too much body. So I can't, it's really hard to cut into the zest unless I take the body off. Let me get the zest out of the way. So that's the lesson. Here's one, it's got, this is what I just did. You see how thin the zest is? Just the best part. The rest is just flesh. So I cut off the flesh to get to, just a little bit of zest there. So I cut off the flesh. The flesh comes off quickly, comes off easy, but if I'm just going for the zest and I still have bringing the body, my desires, if I cut God out, God provides the zest. Here's another one. There's obviously some body on that, but I just want the zest. And even as spiritual as we get, we have a daily reprieve based on our spiritual condition. I cut off the flesh and I get the zest. Very hard for me to cut off. Here's one last piece, one last example. You see the white part? That's the body. You see the yellow part? That's the zest. Now I can try to cut off the zest. I get a little bit of zest. I got as much zest as body here, but it's still, I'm leaving a lot of zest on there. The answer is cut away the body. The body, desires of the flesh, the body, all of that. And I did that, and I have the zest. So that's a great lesson. Now, what are we going to do with all this zest? We're going to get it into 3 tablespoons. 3 tablespoons. 4 tablespoons of zest. Oh boy, I am challenged on that one. There's a couple of more pieces in here that, like I say, have a lot of flesh because I cut it into, sections for drinks. So I'm going to have to cut off the flesh to get that zest. I need to get as much zest for this icing. There's a little more on there, a little more. I'm going to cut off the flesh. There's another example. You see the yellow? That's the zest. It's really hard to cut off the zest. Much easier to cut off the flesh. Even on the ends. I need as much as I can get. So how do I chop this up? Close your ears, everyone. I love these things. That's a start. This is how I start to get in the big pieces. You put all this in there. Take all the glassware off the table because that will go jiggle, 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 jiggle. We don't need that. And I do that about maybe 100 times. even if I check it, think, oh, is it done yet? But it cuts into that. There's that way of doing it. And the pieces are still pretty big. You can see they're pretty big. Another way is to, let's see, what's that? Actually go in and cut it. Food processor, if I have one. I think I've got one tucked away somewhere, but haven't used it lately. And there's another cutter that I like a lot, which is these kind of wedge thing. That cuts it really well. You can put your weight into it. So I'll cut that up into the smallest pieces I can. Takes a while to work on this to get this zest going, because you want it about the size of, oregano, dry oregano or dry basil. You don't want too big chunks, although I'm sure we can live with them. And this has an excellent, I wish here's one of my favorite cutting boards. It actually broke, but it's got a circular thing in the middle. Now that is the best way to do it. If it were glued together, I would be using that and that rounded nut thing. What a find. And where do I find all these tools and things? Guess. Where do I find all this, the apple peeler and something like this and this? Local thrift store. Amazing. Could never find some of these things in a regular store. But in a thrift store, you never know what you're going to find. And usually they're new conditions. People buy things. One of the best things I ever bought was a jar opener. Like $5, a major machine. You know how hard it is to open bottles and things. And this thing, you put it in there, press the button, and it just pops it right open. Can you believe that? So this is looking pretty good. I've got it down to, this looks like, it's like about 2.5 tablespoons. I'm going to have to, so that means I have to make it as tiny as I can. I was pretty generous in the, I have lots of juice, but I don't have as much zest as the recipe calls for. But you know what? You know that thing about the 2 fish, 5 fish, 2 loaves, 5 fish? It works out. And today has just worked out. So our lemon brownies are OTW. And this works really well, this rounded knife. In fact, it seems to be working as well as anything. I'm getting some awesome zest. You see the consistency of the zest. It's really kind of small, and that's what we need. There's a big piece there, but the rest of it's pretty small. So one about that size. And we're going to add that to 1.5 cups of powdered sugar, 3 tablespoons of lemon juice, and hopefully we'll get up to 4 tablespoons of the zest. I'll come back when the brownies are cooked. We'll take a look at them, and I have to let them sit overnight. I think that's the thing. Cool completely. Then you add the glaze. Awesome.